Hi there, and welcome back to another Pickled Unscripted. With me, as always, I have the talented Matt the Pickled Dragon, and I am Dracoya with Avant Art and Scale 75 USA. And today in our video, we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the Underdark situation from our last video. So Matt had a really good question. Who's making all of these changes in WotC? Like, who really wants this? Oh, but before we get into this, wait, Matt, what are you drinking?
Oh, I got bullet as always, the tasty bullet.
You know, it's classic. You've got a favorite. Who can knock that? I wonder who else has tried it. And today I have a limited edition beer from Goose Island. It is a Bananas Foster Stout. Quite
Bananas
heavy.
Foster.
Yeah, quite heavy, quite rich. It's very good. It's not sweet. It has like very small notes of caramel and nutmeg in it, but it's not a sweet beer. It is a dark, heavy, rich beer from Goose Island.
Should
Limited
it be served with a
edition.
banana
I
with
think the
some whipped
banana would
cream?
make it too sweet. No, it's not sweet. It's really not. I don't like sweet stuff, so we're good here. But it does deserve a very special glass, so that is what I'm drinking today. So back to our poll. Matt had a very good question, which was, who really wants these changes that WotC is making? So Matt, he created a poll on his Instagram page. If you're not following us, you should. And we had over 1,000 participants in this poll. To be specific, we had 1,074 participants. And Matt asked the question, should the evil of creatures like mind flayers and beholders be toned down? Yes or no? Yes, we need more nuance Underdark. No, the Underdark should be a place of horrid. Okay, so we had 27% of people say yes, and 73% of people say no.
Yeah, and I'll put the poll, the graphic up somewhere here when this video actually goes up. But so you can kind of see, and I think some of the text got cut off in the poll, but you'll be able to get the gist of what's going on. But you know, previously we've made the argument that the average gamer isn't supportive of all of these lore changes. Um, prior to the sensitivity and inclusion push, 5e saw the highest sales in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. It was like the best selling thing ever. It was like, woo. And, my question then was, if sensitivity and inclusion is so popular, why have sales dropped off since they've begun to implement these changes? Like, and I think it goes back. I think there was a book that came out, a fairly popular book, where they started talking or introducing optional rules that allowed for some of these changes, particularly I think to like racial classes and so forth. And I know that a lot of people will argue, well, it was the OGL scandal and the sales tank. Well, a lot of the sales, if you look at the sales figures, they actually began to drop before the OGL crisis. And and if the layoffs at Hasbro and specifically WotC are any indication, you can see that there is a problem with more than just Hasbro. Dungeon Craft had a couple of videos, and I'll put those video links in the description. You'll have to watch them all the way through because he kind of like sprinkles it as he goes along. But he analyzes sales figures from WotC for Dungeons and Dragons specifically, and he finds that it's really Magic the Gathering in the last year that really took off, and it was based on the weight of the Lord of the Rings Magic set that really pushed sales for WotC, and that at best Dungeons and Dragons broke even, but it was likely that it was underwater for the previous year. So definitely take a look at those videos, but there's a definite and he goes release by release, and you can see that and I think it's not hard to pick out the books that are heavy on the sensitivity and inclusion veil, if you will. But he'll go release by release and say, look, the sales are dropping and dropping and dropping and getting worse. And and I think this is what happens when you prioritize a political agenda over making fun games. You are going to damage the brand. People play
Yeah,
games to have fun, not to be lectured to, not to be told that,
they're
one
horrible people.
one group is a horrible group of people and whatnot.
Yeah, can't say this, can't say that, don't do this, don't do that. We play so that we can have fun and get away from all that nonsense.
Yeah. But one of the things that happened as a result of this poll is I was inundated by messages, both people who expressed their wish to see these changes happen, and those people who were vehemently opposed to all of these changes, the all of the language curation. So, but before we get into those comments, and that's really the point of this video, before we get into those comments, we got a worthy sponsor we would like you all to check out.
I'll just take the Thorm ring. Thank you very much.
Oh, like hell you will. You can have this, take the Venom Dagger. I'll take the Thorm ring.
Venom dagger. What am I? Well, actually, that could be useful. No, wait, I'm taking the Thorm ring.
Over my dead body. I can't
believe
you would even
over your dead body. That could be a ring. I'm
ring.
going to take this dagger and I'm going to shove it up your...
My ring.
Whether you are looking for truly unique rings to exchange on your wedding day, or simply a statement piece for Renaissance fair or cosplay, look no further than Thorum. Rings fit for the gods. Use promo code PICKLED for 20% off your order.
Thank you, Thorum. You're the best.
The best. And we're back. So let's look at the top 3 comments that are in support of sensitivity and inclusion changes. The most frequent responses was that the lore was problematic and it would encourage people to behave badly at the table, causing real harm. Now, if you've seen our videos before, Matt and I are pretty against this thinking, in that if you were going to be an asshole, you were always going to be an asshole. Reading a bunch of books about whatever isn't going to make you suddenly realize that you want to be a jerk. You were just already a jerk to begin with, waiting for any excuse, probably. So people of weak moral character are always going to exist. They don't need any encouragement from us. Trust me, anyone who's been around on this earth for more than 2 minutes can vouch for that. And then another comment is using the term dark elf allows beholders to strive for racial purity or any other concepts being removed can cause problem players to act even worse. All right, but then surely murder, theft, and in general mayhem found in the game is also going to do that. Again, jerks are always going to be jerks. So then we've got a comment of, this kind of lore discourages people from playing the game. Okay, well, I think that that's very unlikely that a particular culture or lore is going to discourage somebody from playing the game. I mean, there's a lot of other different RPGs out there, and by all means, if you like some other RPG or story, go do whatever your heart feels like it wants to do. But to say that the lore specifically is going to discourage people from picking D&D versus another thing, I don't know about that. And then let's see, we've got those who are fragile, that lore like that. Then there's a lot of people who are just so fragile that lore like this is going to force them out of the game. They probably had bigger issues to address. Maybe they had bigger issues, or maybe they had some triggers that they're just not happy with, and that's totally fine. We're all allowed to have our trauma, and again, go play your own thing. That's okay. And then the other comment that we had that was for sensitivity was that younger players, 30 and lower, prefer that the game comes without any baggage. Okay, well, Sweetheart, anyone who's above the age of 22 and has gone on even more than one date knows that everybody and their brother and cousin and sister has baggage. That is the world that we live in. It is called being human. Welcome. So I don't think that anyone's actually given that like some specifics. There were a lot of younger people in Matt's group, and there's actually a lot of younger people in my group, ages between 20, actually I think 19 was, no, I'm sorry. I've done groups for as young as 12. So 12 years old all the way up to 42. And this wasn't really the case, but we've got over 1,000 people in this poll. So Matt, why don't you give us the comments that are for people who are opposed to the changes?
Yeah. So one of the funniest comments that was made, to me, I found it funny. I laughed out loud. And there were lots of comments. There were lots of comments like this, but this one was particularly funny for me. I want my villains to be pure evil, not sort of mischievous. I just found that funny. Like I could see a beholder giving someone a hot foot, like some silly little prank or whatever, but whatever.
There's a difference between fighting the devil and fighting Loki.
Yeah, and if you really want to dive into that quote, you could look at our last video because we're really returning to the idea of placing constraints on evil. Like evil's going to do bad things, The next quote, these changes represent pandering to an overly sensitive minority of people. And much like it's difficult to quantify, like, younger people prefer the game without baggage. It's difficult to quantify this one, but if you're going to give any weight to the above one, you have to give equal weight to this one because the same strength behind it. Now it's easy to say your group is anecdotal, but I have run games for hundreds, if not thousands, maybe 1,000, but thousands of players. I've run weekly and bi-weekly games at game stores for years and these are open tables, so there's a constant flow of people.
Trust me, guys, getting on his schedule is tough because he is always playing D&D.
Yeah, and I've run games at conventions and more games than I can count at conventions. My brain is broken trying to think of them all. I mean, the numbers of people I have DM'd for over the years is staggering, I would say. I would argue. And I have only ever seen an issue with an overly sensitive player one time in all those many years, 30 years of me going to conventions and game stores and stuff. 40 years playing the game at home with groups of people.
Was it the
and that one person, yeah, and that one person wasn't even at my table. It was another person's table.
Well, okay.
And so I have never come across this person who's just like red-faced because there was slavery in the game and they had to get up and take a break from the table because their heart is thumping out of their chest and they're having a panic attack because I mentioned the word civilization or whatever.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that my experience goes beyond anecdotal because of the sheer numbers of people I've interacted with over the years at games. But I would really like to hear if anybody has a story about an overly sensitive player, because honestly, I just don't see it. I like the one exception, and we have a previous video where I talk about that exception in a game, but
put it in the description down below.
Yeah. And the last comment that people make, sorry, is that sheltering people from sensitive topics makes them weaker people. Now, you can make the argument that it's not up to a game or a dungeon master or anybody to make anybody else stronger or give anyone else the moral fortitude to handle these sensitive topics other than maybe a therapist.
That's correct.
But I like to say, and this was said in the last video, the power of storytelling to teach right and wrong is something that is not talked about today. It's not emphasized today, but it's so true. You know, when people interact in a little morality play that is a session of D&D, they can learn powerful, they can take on an important message of what it is to be a hero and you know what is right and what is wrong. Because you know, I like to run games of good versus evil, the classic kind of Tolkien-esque games. Now, some people like to run the sandbox games where heroes, well, I shouldn't say heroes, they would be adventurers, but I like to run games for heroes.
I like to put my games in a little bit more of murky territory. Like, you know, do you save one person that you know or 5 people that you don't?
Yeah.
And, you know, work your way up to that slowly and see what your players do.
Yeah.
I like giving them moral ambiguity.
It's you know, I get the feeling that on one hand you have a group of people who are in favor of sensitivity and inclusion editing in the hobby, and they say it's because this lore, these topics are taboo, that we should exclude them. And to that I say, if these topics and lore are so problematic, then we should discuss them. We should confront them because it's what heroes would do. So
heroes don't sweep things under the rug just because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our own personal opinions, and in the end, a DM is free to run the game how they wish.
Yeah,
but I thought the results of the video, I thought the results of the poll were pretty interesting. I mean, over 700 people said no, please don't change my Underdark. You know, I want that good versus evil, light versus dark dichotomy. You know, and you know, a pretty significant minority were more in favor of the sensitivity and inclusion side. And I shouldn't even say sensitivity and inclusion because I didn't word it that way in the poll. I just said, do you want more nuance in the Underdark? Which is fair.
You know, 1 in 4 people is not the majority by far, but that is a significant pool of people. You know, that is a significant portion of people who agree with these changes, and I think that's completely fine. You know, and there's no reason. Honestly, what I think WotC should have done is I think they should have come out with different books that had more sensitivity and inclusion and was a little more well-rounded for those group of people, because while it's not the majority, it is a significant portion. And, you know, have something for those people and then have something for everybody else, because the majority of people still are where we want to be. They're still in our camp.
Yes. So please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, come on back and have another round on us.